Hi, I'm not sure if everyone is getting this live. We're going to wait a few minutes. We're also going to do a quick test to make sure people are able to see this on the outside. I got a spy out there with a phone that's going to text me. So we'll give it a few minutes. I want to make sure things are working correctly too. Good evening, by the way, if you're out there. My name's Tucker Hamilton. Call sign is Cinco, as in the Spanish 5. And, excited to be able to talk to the folks that are out there. Let's make sure it's working first, and then I'll do some admin stuff with regards to how we're going to do this Hangout. I have an armada of computers around me. Make sure things work. Oh, good. I'm getting confirmation that we're good. People see me. I'll give it 1 minute. We'll get started on the hour at 8 p.m. All right, looks like it's time. Great. Well, welcome to Google Hangouts, the first ever AIAA free online live streaming webinar. We'll see how this goes. A big call out to Ben Jimenez out there who's totally set all this up for Region 1 students. And if at any point you got questions, good old Twitter here, you can just put in hashtag #AskCinco, and I'm going to be following that on Twitter. I just got a Twitter account tonight for this, so coming up in the world. So ask Cinco if you guys have any questions. So good evening. I'm Tucker Hamilton, like I said a few moments ago. I'm a fighter test pilot for the U.S. Air Force. I'm going to give this brief on making a difference, share some lessons learned that I had, and we'll primarily go off this PowerPoint. I might have to jump back and forth. There's some issues with some of the videos I have, and we'll see if I can work around that. So without further ado, let me share the screen with you, my entire screen. I'm going to get the PowerPoint slide up, and then I'm going to ask Ben to make sure, he's going to text me again, make sure that it's working correctly. So here we go to share, and then run over to my presentation, set it up this way. So Ben, I'll be standing by, make sure you can still hear me and that you can still see the presentation as it comes up. It'll just take a sec. And once you are good with that, hit me a text and I'll start the presentation. There we go. I'm showing that the presentation is up. Wait for the text here. So I hope folks are doing well out there. I'm not sure where you're all calling in from. If you want, I guess you could use the Ask Cinco and tell me if you're out there. Not sure who's representing. All right. So, okay, good. All right, you've seen it. Let's start. So, experimental test pilot. We're going to talk about means. I'm trying to make an impact. This will be about 30 minutes. We'll see how far we get into this. I just want to be able to talk. Like I said, answer your questions too. Feel free. Some lessons learned sprinkled throughout. Ground rules for the brief. So these are personal stories meant to convey the lessons learned that I've had. So do feel free to ask. I know it's via Twitter, but please do that. And I am biased. My answer is not yours. So I am trying to convey kind of what I've learned through these experiences, and there's a lot of different lessons that people may gain from them about me. So you see Star Trek Enterprise there and Braveheart. When I was a young kid, this was a huge motivator for me. Star Trek, in the sense that I wanted to explore space. It was a huge driver, and it kind of put me down the path of wanting to be an astronaut. Braveheart, because it was the first movie I saw when I was a young boy, that really taught me that there was more out there for fighting, more out there worth fighting for, this idea of fighting for freedom. So it kind of went like the Enterprise made me want to be an astronaut, and Braveheart kind of drove me to this idea of service. And ultimately, those doors opened up to a pilot training position for me for the Air Force. And there's me with a little Cessna. And then a few years later, there's me and my wife and 3 of my kids. Our 4th was born shortly after this picture. Me on top of my F-15E Strike Eagle. And this is just recently last summer when I was a test pilot for the Air Force flying F-15s. A little bit about me. So I have some videos to show you, and this next video is not going to play correctly. So I'm going to give it a second. I'm going to escape from there, go back to Google Hangouts, stop sharing this screen. All right, so you guys should see me. We're going to give this a try. So I flew F-15Cs operationally, which means air-to-air. We only shot at other aircraft kind of airframe. I did that operationally for a few years in the Air Force before becoming an Air Liaison Officer with the Army, before going to test pilot school, before becoming a test pilot, and now before working in the Pentagon. So, okay. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this or not. Not horrible. Not great. All right, it may work. Here we go. So you're seeing a HUD tape of an engagement that I was involved with in the summer, or pardon me, in February of 2008. So the bottom right-hand corner of your screen is a God's eye view of our engagement. It's BFM. So we're about to pass. You're going to see a little dot on the screen. There comes my wingman, and we're about to merge. So we're dogfighting. We call this high aspect BFM. You can see kind of what it looks like from a God's eye view. We're away from each other now. We're pointed back towards each other. We're preparing to what we call merge in this dogfighting engagement. I pull my nose up, so that's me kind of pointing up at the sun and then coming back around. See if this is coming in. Oh, good, the video, I guess, is coming through well. And we're about to merge again. Now pay attention to this part. This is a very intense, tragic moment in my life. So it's kind of my first experience, a personal story I'm sharing here. And that was a mid-air collision that I was in. It was tragic because my wingman died on impact there. He hit about 20 feet behind my canopy. I miraculously survived that initial impact. I ejected from the airplane, nearly died in the ocean after accidentally dropping my life support gear. But I survived. I was picked up by some fishermen that found me. The other planes that were searching for me couldn't find me because I didn't have any of my signaling devices on me. And I ended up being rescued, which was an experience, both the tragic part and also going through something where you think you're going to die. It's very intense. It's very real. I don't wish that on anyone, but I will say if there's something that's going to put your priorities straight, it's an incident like that. And I hope and pray that other people can think about their lives without having to go through an incident like that, and make sure that you're living for the right reasons, and that your priorities are straight. And I'll talk to more in a second when I share my screen. It was tragic, yet I will show you later that there was good that came from it. I do believe there's a reason for everything. There's a purpose in our lives, and what came from that, I believe, kind of points to somewhat of a providence with it. This is my aircraft. Hopefully you guys get the screen back up. My aircraft was completely destroyed. And his was the same, like I said, just miraculous that I made it out. There is a blessing in disguise, like I mentioned, when surviving a close call. I think one of the big things that I learned from that is I made mistakes, he made mistakes. It was pilot error on both of our parts that caused that. You can't be afraid to share those lessons learned with others. People go through difficult things. People go through things that you've been through. Maybe not a mid-air collision, something dramatic like that, but just as dramatic as a close call that you may have had, or other issues or mistakes you've made, and I challenge you to share those. All right, from flying the F-15C, I went and became an Air Liaison Officer. While I was an Air Liaison Officer, which is a ground job, I work with Army on the ground. I got picked up to go fly the MC-12, which is an intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft. It doesn't fire anything, but it supports troops on the ground, and it was an amazing experience. This is part of the country of Afghanistan. It is gorgeous country. It's beautiful. And at least the part I was in, the north east portion, just gorgeous mountains. And I learned a lot while I was flying there. I watched the Afghan population a lot because we're gathering intel. And it was very humbling to see how these people lived, and it gave me a different perspective. It taught me that maybe I shouldn't judge so quickly on who our enemies are and circumstances other people are placed in when they have to be in a situation as dramatic and as scary and as unpredictable as this kind of land. It's by far been the best thing I've done in the Air Force. So from there, I went to Test Pilot School out of MC-12s, and that is the best aviation experience in the world that you can ask for. It's a one-year school. You get a master's degree at the end of it in engineering. You fly 20 to 30 aircraft. These are a list of aircraft I flew. Who's who of aviation drops in. We had just Chuck Yeager will come in and talk to our class, or Bert Rattan, Dick Rattan, the people at Scaled Composites, people at Virgin Galactic, people, you name it, and all these who's who of aviation comes in and speaks to you. It's just amazing. And you're able to just learn to fly on the water. I learned to fly a Zeppelin right there. I got into a MiG-15, quite a dangerous little aircraft. I got into helicopters. So one of the most exciting flights I had was in a Black Hawk. This is a UH-72, but the Black Hawk, very, very cool flight. And we get to actually fly these when we're going through. There's a CV-22, which was really exciting. We didn't get to fly that, but we got to stay in the back for an entire mission set, and that was really neat to see. We got to learn to land on the water, so that's I'm in there somewhere enjoying the HU-16. There's an AN-2 Colt, really cool old aircraft. Then we got the A-10, so that's single seat. I got to go just fly the A-10 with one of my best buddies from college. He's in my wedding and everything. He was my instructor on my wing when I got to go fly this single seat. And I got about 1 day of instruction to go fly this. It usually takes them about 4 weeks to 6 weeks to get their first flight. And we were in the cockpit, shooting the gun, dropping bombs right away. Because as a test pilot, they want you to have these experiences of flying lots of things and learning what's essential to get airborne and safely. There's a Hornet, very cool plane. So once again, wonderful experience as a test pilot. And really what we do, so here's an F-16 that's old school, a cockpit from the 80s. Now, here's what a cockpit looks like now. So go back. All these things in the F-16 that have changed, not just all these sensors and displays, but also the weapons that it carries that made it into this cockpit. They have to be tested first by somebody. They need to be flown in order that they're safe and that they meet any kind of specifications. So that's what we do as developmental test pilots. We take weapons and systems and sensors and make sure that they meet specification. Once they've met specification, then we actually hand them over to operational test pilots who put them through simulated combat scenarios, and they're the ones that really ring it out. So that's operational test. I'm a developmental test pilot. All right, so this is the point. I don't think this video is going to work. Sorry about that. You just see all the apps that I have. This video also doesn't work, but I'm going to get it set up because this is serendipity, I call it. I was in that accident. I shared lessons learned about dogfighting, about water survival, because I made some pretty bad mistakes to help other people. And I fessed up to those and I moved on. Well, while I was at test pilot school, we do test management projects. So we take a brand new project that's never before been tested, and we take it all the way through, well, not all the way through, but we take it through a number of very important test steps. And I was a part of the first team that tested an automatic air collision avoidance system. So I'm part of a team that has this technology that saves people from mid-air collisions. So I'm going to exit again, go back to this, stop sharing here. All right, you get to see me again. Here I am. And I'm going to show you this technology, kind of the idea of what it does. Hopefully it'll come through. So you take two aircraft, and this is an actual incident that happened. An F-16 ran into a T-38, killed two people right there. So what if these aircraft could talk to each other, and talking to each other, they could see, hey, there may be a collision that is impending, and before the pilots know anything about it, they take control of the aircraft, they maneuver it out of the way, and they avoid a collision. So that's what the automatic air collision avoidance system does. And I was able to go test this airborne. So this technology is going to save a ton of lives, tons of money, and it is ready. It is almost ready to be fielded. And I was able to be an advocate because I've been through a mid-air collision and also tested and be a part of this technology. It's very exciting. Once again, providence in my mind. All right, I'm going to go back. Sorry for back and forth. Hopefully this is not too bad. All right. So at Eglin, the 40th Flight Test Squadron is the one that tests all the F-15s, F-16s, and A-10s. So I got to test both F-15Cs and F-15Es. Here's a video I'm not going to show you. I will say I was flying in the back seat of an aircraft last summer, and my gear collapsed on landing. The front seat pilot was getting a FAM ride. So it was actually a helicopter test pilot that we were just kind of showing him the F-15. He's in the front seat, I'm in the back. He has the gear handle, I don't. He can turn the engines off and on. I can't do anything. I don't have any screens. He does a landing, he touches down and the gear collapses. I immediately take the aircraft airborne again because I was ready basically for, he's not used to landing fixed wing aircraft. Did a great job, but I needed to be there as an instructor pilot. Immediately took the aircraft around. We were low on gas, low on fuel. I had to instruct him in the front seat of things to do. We worked with people on the ground in the tower. We came back around just a few minutes later because we were so low on gas, and I had to land. If you look at that runway, there's a cable on there. And usually when we land in the back seat, we just land 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet down. We let the airplane float. We get a good idea because you can't see in front of you. You have to wait till some runway gets to the side of you and you have a good feeling of where to touch down. Well, I needed to touch down in the first, I needed to touch down in a 400-foot zone starting at around 300 feet from the threshold. So from the very beginning of the runway. And that is not very simple because we just simply don't do that. And you can't see, I can't see in front of me. So these videos kind of show that this incident, it's interesting, but I'll show you a quick picture. This is what happened. One of our gear just collapsed. But the lesson learned, you've always got to be ready, and you need to remember your foundational responsibilities. I go fly test. I do a number of things airborne. We usually don't worry so much about the comings and goings of flying, taking off and landing. But you need to know what you really need to be responsible for, which for me as a pilot, the foundational stuff of making sure you don't lose any of that because you never know when you're going to need it. All right, so flight tests, we'll get into this. We did some really cool stuff in flight tests with the F-15s. It was a number of things I'll go over, checking the time, sorry. Trident missile testing, compatibility flight profile. basically taking a store on the aircraft and flying it throughout the entire envelope of the F-15 and making sure that it stays on the aircraft, so compatibility flight. We also did first ever missile shots, which were very exciting, a missile that's never been on the aircraft, and we're gonna go shoot it at a live F-4 drone. And we did some cool science experiments. So I'll talk about the science experiment first. Look at that SpaceX picture. So if you remember, SpaceX did its first launch of what was it? Something going to the International Space Station, the first commercial launch of something going to the ISS. And we had this awesome opportunity. We just did a science experiment. We flew over the Gulf. We took a pod that someone told us to go take a pod and go watch and track this entire launch. So I watched SpaceX fly launch out of Cape Canaveral from the Gulf and just tracked it all the way for a very long time. And it was really cool. So we kind of get to do cool stuff like that. I got to go chase a Tomahawk missile. So Tomahawk missile launched out as a submarine, and I picked it up. I was 500 feet over the sub, pick it up visually as it's launching out of the sub, which by the way is not easy to see because guess what? It's a sub, it's under the water. And then it launches from the sub, pick it up visually, and actually fly formation with the Tomahawk missile as we have it test its impact and what it does on the land ranges at Eglin. So very exciting, cool stuff. I'll get into the Trident missile testing. Trident missile, it's a warhead. It's a nuclear missile. This missile is used out of nuclear submarines. So it's part of the leg of it's a sea-based leg of the nuclear triad, people would say. The cool thing about this is this missile comes out of the submarine and it has a navigation pod with it. That navigation pod needs to find out where that missile is, so it really knows and is exact on where that missile is going. You don't want to miss your target with a nuclear weapon. So we have to do testing. I think this video may run, so we'll see. Yeah. So here is the Trident getting launched out of a sub. This is what a Trident is usually. So it launches, it hits that water, it gets that rocket booster. There's an aerospike that comes out the top that reduces drag. It has a number of boost phases, and it's off to the races to go do its work as a nuclear weapon. So we get to go test the navigation system on that. So you take the navigation system out of that missile, you put it in a pod that we carry on the F-15, and then we make the navigation system think that it is actually getting launched from a submarine to test the navigation system. So we get to go to a location, we get to fly. This is a much better view, a lot of upside down work, and I'll get to why we do that in a second, but it's really cool to go do these kind of missions. So there's a lot of test pilot challenges for this. This pod is very special and unique, so we have a lot of limits. Once you trick the navigation system into thinking that it's launched, you can't just like redo it. So you have to go, and you only have so much time because the batteries for the navigation system only last so long. You have to limit your AOA, your angle of attack, because you can't have buffet on the navigation system because it wouldn't experience that. And it would basically mess up the test. You have to maintain a certain airspeed, gives you a certain energy state. Sometimes we have to do rolls to test certain algorithms with the navigation system, and it has to be very exact. So attitude control, very cool things as a test pilot, and it's quite a challenge. So you can see the pod right there, the navigation system goes in that. We do a number of different profiles. We test gimbal lock avoidance profile, which is a really interesting one, where you basically just go out and you do a bunch of rolls, and you're targeting 92nd degree roll rates. So I'm going to show you this video. It actually just runs. You're going to see roll rate on the right increasing. My bad. Thursday. So there's a roll rate, there's one roll, and you're gonna see the roll rate on the right, there's a bar that goes up as they roll, and they're trying to hit 90 degrees per second. There's a roll rate. So you go up and fly, and the record I think was 140 of those. So someone would go up and fly, and they're just testing the gimbal locks on this, and they would just do aileron rolls, which is nauseating, but it's cool what we're doing because we're testing that part of the navigation system. Another thing we're testing is a reliability profile. We basically wanted to measure any kind of navigation errors. And this profile is, if you look at that graph, it's almost an exact emulation of the different boost phases that the navigation system goes through. So you see in the table, there's a time and there's a G level. So at time 0, it's 1 G. At 5 seconds later, it's at 4 Gs. At 6 seconds later, it's at 1 G. So it's simulating that 4 Gs initially is the missile coming out of the water, and then there's less of the G goes down, and then the boost phase kicks in, and so it kind of it builds you all the way up through these different phases. So you're actually pretending that you're the missile getting launched, and these are the G's that you're pulling. So this is just something that's real data over what we're planning to follow the different G's, and this tape runs as well.
Maneuver begins in a 1G flight with the wings banked in the direction of turn.
That's an iPod that we listen to listen to the G's. So it says begin maneuver. It tells us what G's.
1.5, 2.1, 1.0, 2.5, 2.8.
So we go through and we just pull the G's that it's telling to so we can have that profile. Another profile we do is an accuracy profile. We're stressing the guidance system and also measuring navigation error. And we're just doing a bunch of aerobatics. So 5.5 G horizontal figure eights, 2 to 5.5 G wind-up turns. That's just an increasing G horizontal turn, Cuban eights, loops. Mind you, we also have to have all those AOA limits, angle of attack limits, and we can't have buffet and other limitations as we go through. It's a 22 event card. The record's been 21 events, and you're basically just out there doing a lot of high G stuff. That's the crazy thing about this. If you look at this graph, you have G on the y-axis and time on the x-axis. You are pulling G's an average of 30 minutes. You're pulling 3.7 G's steady for 30 minutes. And it is actually quite intense to pull that many G's for so long. Most of you pull around 2 G's when you're on roller coasters, and you have not experienced 3.7. And we go all the way up to 6 with some of the movers. So it actually can be quite intense, but it's also fun. And this is kind of the what it looks like from a God's eye of doing those different loops to music, just different turns and clover leaves, Cuban eights is really what we're doing. So just kind of, we have to pay attention to the winds and how we're doing the maneuvers with regard to that too. All right, compatibility flight profile testing. So this has been another cool experience. We get to go bring out those weapon systems to make sure that a store, not a weapon system, but a weapon, make sure a store that we put on an aircraft doesn't break off. So we need to take it to the corners of the aircraft envelope. It's a lot of test planning. You have to make sure that you're doing a very precise profile for it, and it can be dangerous. We have lost aircraft and lives going out to the corners of the envelope. We mitigate a lot of that, and I personally had some issues when I was going fast, but I felt comfortable, flying these profiles too. So some cool things I got to do when I was doing this profile was a really high speed run. So we go really fast, and we want to make sure that in this case, we were testing a missile, an AMRAAM. We wanted to make sure that it was good on the wing at these really high speeds. We also had to do high G maneuvers, high G rolls. So imagine we pull like, pulling G, I'm hoping everyone knows that, I won't explain that, but like 7+ G turns, and then we have to do full rolls under 7 Gs. So it's this asymmetric rolling motion that is very difficult as a pilot to do, and it's also very tough on the airframe and on the store that we're testing. So we get to do things like that. So I have this note down here. I'll say why I put this, the unknown can be scary, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't go there, is that there are things that you do as test pilots that not many other people have ever done. So I took these missiles there for the first time to this airspeed, and there were some funny things that happened. I felt like I lost a little bit of directional stability, not negative directional stability, but it kind of went into the neutral area, which is really bad because it means if you think of a yaw motion of an airplane, it means if I lose that directional stability, I could actually get a beta excursion. And if you're going to Mach and you get a beta excursion, you're going to die. It's going to, the drag will immediately break apart the aircraft and kill the pilot. The G's are too much. So I was flying and I got to like 1.8 Mach, and I started noticing somewhat of a directional stability issue, a decreased directional stability. And I needed to use my test pilot skills to know if I should keep going or not. Same with when we went really high speed, there was this loud sound that popped up when I was flying high speed, and I've never gone, the one I'm talking about right now is actually a high KCAS, low altitude, so not a high Mach, but a really high KCAS, a high Q, a dynamic pressure. So I was flying really fast, really low, a lot of pressure on the system, the jet, and I heard this loud pop. And I initially aborted that run, and I started again. I heard the pop again at high airspeed, and I just needed to know that I could keep going and rely on my training to inform me when it was too much. So just because I hadn't been there and I wasn't familiar with that sound, it turns out that is actually not too bad, and that happens because that's what happens at those high speeds. I just didn't know it because I'd never been there. So you know, maybe scary, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't go there. You just need to be smart on how you're addressing it as a test pilot. We got to do this first ever missile shot, really cool. So the first time this missile ever came off an Eagle was we were pulling 7 Gs at 1.2 Mach, 2 nautical miles behind a full-scale F-4 drone. And, oh, by the way, we had a chase aircraft that was required to be around 1,000 feet off our wing. So 7 Gs, 1.2 Mach, for the first time, press the pickle button required a lot of training in the sim. We needed to make sure we knew what we were doing and that it was going to come off right. Turns out that it worked out fine. Okay, Joint Strike Fighter. I'm part of the Joint Strike Fighter program. Right now I'm the Developmental Test Lead for the program, which means I manage the different test sites and the different test activities that those sites are doing to ensure that we get through developmental tests. Remember, developmental. That's the first people to fly it to make sure that it meets specs. And there's a lot of challenges, a lot of communication challenges, a lot of stakeholders. You got Lockheed Martin, that's LM, Pratt & Whitney, P&W, Edwards Test Site, a Fort Worth Test Site, a Pax River Test Site. You have 8 partner nations. So there is lots of bureaucracy. And there's a lot of things that we have to deal with. But it comes down to communication. We have to have open communication. We need to be able to tell other people what's going on and know that they can trust us so that they can tell us things that are going on as well. So the Joint Strike Fighter, it's going to have huge impact to our warfighters. And it is going to be, though it's not yet, it's still in test, it is going to be the preeminent fighter of the 21st century, I'm sure of it. I say there's a reason for bureaucracy because it's sometimes hard to know and sift your way through all the paperwork or the policies or the bureaucracy of what you're working on. And that could be for anyone in school and jobs, wherever, in the government. And there's a reason for it, but there's usually a way around it because usually people are trying to mitigate some risk that they've experienced before, and that's why they have some level of policy or bureaucracy. But if you kind of find the heart of that and why someone did that, usually there's right ways to work around that bureaucracy, and usually with it or through it, talking to the right people, so you're not breaking rules, but you're getting things done. And that's the difficulty with bureaucracy, is still trying to get things done. There's a picture of the F-35C, went out to the a carrier last November and landed on the carrier for the first time, very exciting. And that just some cool F-35 pictures. All right, last few minutes here, I want to talk about STEM. So STEM outreach is kind of my passion. I think that especially as STEM professionals, we have got to get out to our communities. We have got to get into those schools and teach kids how fascinating and cool different professions are in STEM. So I started this organization, STEM Ed, but it's really a continuance of my AIAA STEM outreach. I started this organization just so I didn't intimidate non-AIAA members, but it's really me talking to teachers, finding out what they need, and then going to my list of volunteers and seeing how they can help and support those teachers. And I just micromanage. That sounds bad, but I manage what's going on to make sure that the teacher gets what they need. I don't just tell a volunteer, hey, contact this teacher if you want to help. I say contact me, and I'll contact the teacher and make sure that everyone's working together. So it's a passion of mine. All right, I'll go through these quickly. This will be on YouTube if you want to check it out later. I know I'm kind of past the time, but I'll just keep talking. And Ben, you can hit me up on email if there's any issues that if you see the time. All right, making a difference. It's all based on your perspective on what that difference is. We all have to deal with professional pressures. What is the prescribed path? We have to deal with societal pressures. Doing things for money and fame and power. People working too hard, workaholics, that kind of thing. That's hard to get around and try to make a difference without succumbing to these pressures. Distractions, distractions are difficult at times because some of them are great, some of them are not. It's all in moderation, right? And what your difference is, I don't know. It depends on where you're feeling called, what you want to do and how you want to get involved. All right. Rules that I live by: don't let your boss, coworkers, or society dictate what is important. You need to know what's important. Follow the call upon your heart. And I say holy here, that's kind of a religious term. What I mean is pure, unadulterated by what society is telling you you should be doing. And doing it for the right reasons is what it comes down to. The 80% solution is a good place to start. I have an idea and I kind of go with it. It's like Ben's idea with this right here. It's an idea and Supriya's idea. It's an idea, let's do it, let's give it a try, let's go for it, and let's learn from how it goes. And if ever in doubt, you just start moving. That's what you do. And you cautiously, but you move nonetheless. You definitely need to just start going. I will say, when I think of service, I think of different ways to serve. One, I think you need to serve your family. That is number one. You need to take care of your wife, your spouse, pardon me, not your wife, but maybe your wife, your spouse, your kids. Take care of yourself and your family. Then serve your community in what you do. Serve your community as an aerospace engineer, as a mechanical engineer, and then also try to serve your community in outreach methods, volunteering with schools or churches or shelters, things like that. Bureaucracy, it's always there. Find credible ways around it. Don't cut it off, to disregard it completely. Find the way through that bureaucracy. Is not easy. It's so much easier to say than do. But attempt to do that, because nothing will discredit you more than just illegally or doing something completely off the wall because you didn't want to follow the bureaucracy. And I grant people the benefit of the doubt. That's how I try to live. I assume people are trying to do things for the right reason. And I try to do the same thing, though I trust but verify. I give them the benefit of the doubt, but I also double check. And then I try not to judge when it doesn't turn out the way that I want it to. Speed bumps. Speed bumps, all you can do is work hard for the right reasons. But speed bumps can be blessings. These are pictures of things that I worked on. The Excel is really, I've done so much with Excel to try to make processes better that have come to nothing. It's been a complete waste. But I learned from that. I learned from experiences. I work hard. I try to do it for the right reasons. You also have other speed bumps in life that are very serious. Tragedy and issues and just doubt of your job or bosses that are bad, or, it's tough. I think what you have to do is still follow that call on your heart and continue to move forward, and maybe take yourself out of bad situations, of course, but try to appreciate it for what it is and work your hardest. Distractions, always difficult. I don't know if a distraction, if you're sitting on a beach watching a TV, that's probably not a distraction. That's probably pretty glorious. But video games and sports, in moderation, right? Don't miss the calling on your heart. Accomplishing something that you really feel driven to do because you're too distracted with these other things. And I say the grass is always greener. That's more of a distraction of you're in a job, you don't like it. Oh, it's so much better if I were to do this, or so much better. It's obviously better if I were to go do this job. But it's not always. You need to always assume that. All right. All right, aim high. I think you need to focus on your current work. Do great at whatever you're doing right now, but never lose focus on your passions. For me, space, going to Mars, being an astronaut, those excite me. Am I crushed if that doesn't happen? No, I enjoy trying to live each day in the moment, though that's not always that simple. But get out there and follow your passions. Don't waste your time. We got one life, right? Don't waste your time on things that you don't feel passionate about. And I think getting out there and serving your community in some fashion, though it may be intimidating at first, it may reveal some real passions for you. And I just encourage you to get out there and go for it. Aim high. You are influencing your world around you. You like it or not, you're doing it. You right now are impacting people. It may not be in a good way, but you are impacting people. So think about that. What type of world do you want to see? Move in that direction. Like I said earlier, do something, anything. Stay focused on those priorities. Influence your world in a positive way that's meaningful to you. When you're sitting there bobbing in the proverbial waters of death, like I was after my accident, and you think about your life, you need to be able to look back and know that you were doing things for the right reasons, that you were serving other people, your community, your family, and that you are content. Because that is the key right there, is to know that it was worth it, and that your life, that you were content about the choices you made and how you spent your time. So easy to say, but no better time than now, is what I say. Just go for it. I'm going to stop sharing that. And here I am again in front of you all. I think I may have a question. Let me see. All right, I got a question. How did your aerospace education influence your pilot training? So, if you want to be a pilot in the Air Force, you do not have to be an aerospace engineer. They teach you everything you need in pilot training to be able to fly. It helped with some things, but for the most part, it had no effect. If you want to be a pilot in the Air Force, or probably the Navy is the same way, and you are a history major or a communication major, whatever major, do it. You can do that. If you want to be a test pilot and you want to do stuff with technology, then you got to be not an aerospace engineer, but you have to do something technical. So physics, math, science, engineering, that you have to do it. You can't be a test pilot without those. All right, got another question here. All right, what advice do you have for students who want to become pilots? Well, if you want to be a pilot, just go fly. It costs some money, but you can go fly Cessnas and do exciting things like that. I personally am not a big GA guy, but I have my private pilot's license and my instrument rating, and I've flown some GA aircraft. Get out there. If you want to be a military pilot, the best thing to do is to go to the academy, which I didn't do, and I'm glad I didn't do it. I did ROTC at the University of Colorado. I don't think I mentioned that. I also don't think I mentioned engineering at the University of Colorado. I have an aerospace master's from the University of Tennessee, and then I have that Master of Science from US Air Force Test Pilot School in flight test engineering. So if you want to be a pilot for the military academy, ROTC is a good way to go, or you compete for like an OTS spot, or you could join the military as an officer. You have to be an officer in the Air Force once you're in the military for one of those pilot slots. Very competitive. It's very difficult. Academy, not so competitive. ROTC, not so competitive. OTS, very competitive. And on active duty, trying to get in, very competitive. But definitely doable. You need to do well in school and have a good GPA. You need to have demonstrated good leadership skills. People have asked me, how do I demonstrate good leadership? Well, you get involved. Get involved with AIAA. Get involved with STEM Ed, my organization. There's a plug. Get involved with your church or a school, or do things like that. And that'll teach you about leadership. So there's a good way to demonstrate leadership. And then fly. I don't know anyone that made it into OTS to get a pilot slot that didn't have a lot of hours beforehand as a pilot. Not a lot, but definitely a private pilot's license. I would go for commercial rating after that, because it's only a few flights, and then instrument rating if you can do it. But you got to fly to be competitive to get those spots. All right. What was your favorite moment as a test pilot? All right. Favorite moment as a test pilot? That's a good question. There's a lot of exciting, cool things that we got to do. I would say that compatibility flight profile, where I took the AIM 120 out to like the corners of the envelope, was very exciting. Nerve-wracking, but exciting nonetheless. That was cool. That I kind of talked about the cool ones. Shooting that missile for the first time, real close to an F4 drone, which by the way was cool because you're pulling G's, you dive down, you pull a lot of G's, you shoot the missile, and then you got to watch out for the wreckage. Pardon me, of the F4. So that was kind of exciting and cool to watch. Or to be a part of. I actually, at the very end, the first time we went to shoot that missile, it hung. We had a problem with it. So I went on vacation, and then my buddy got to shoot the missile, but I was still in all the planning and all that for it. Those were definitely exciting. The Tomahawk was cool to say that I did it, and to pick up the Tomahawk missile out of the sub and then just chase it into land. That was pretty cool. And then a number of weapon things were pretty cool. Okay, another question. Someone said, how did I get my call sign? All right, so here's a quick story for you. My call sign Cinco is in the Spanish 5. I was a young wingman. It's always from some story of a pilot doing something stupid. So I was a young wingman on the wing of my flight lead, flying an offensive counter-air training mission. So we're going in, we're sweeping the bad guys out of the area in a training scenario. We're going to go over the target area that notional strikers were going to go attack. We're going to cap over them to protect them, and then we're going to lead them out. So it's about a 35 minute mission that we had. So we go down the initial track to take care of the enemy bad guys, to sweep them out of the area. And I'm on my flight lead's wing formation. We're about usually 2 miles or so off someone's wing. We call it like off, this is the flight lead, this would be me. Depending on how you look at it, I'm at their 3 or 9 o'clock, but they're about 2 miles, but line abreast, like right with them. Line abreast, God's eye is just with them. Shoot our missiles, we turn sideways, we call kills on the bad guys, and we turn back in to go to the target area. We're gonna sweep and kill everyone else in front of us. So we do that. And I get out of position. So I'm like 4 miles away from my flight lead when I should be 2, and I'm aft. I'm slung way aft, if you can kind of tell. And I'm far away. So my flight lead can't see me. He says 2, positive. I was like, 2's at your left, 8 o'clock, 4 miles, closing. Like I'm out of position. I should be at the 9 o'clock, but I'm at the 8 o'clock position, or maybe even 7 o'clock position, closing. So I start plugging in 5 stages of afterburner to get back in formation with my flight lead. He's like, 2, positive. 30 seconds later, I was like, all right, I'm moving back into formation. 2 is at your left, 9 o'clock now, 2 miles. I'm there, I'm in formation. 30 seconds go by, and he's like, 2, where are you? I'm blind, I don't see you. Positive, where are you? And I was like, all right, I gotta move in. So I move in real close to my flight lead, and I get about a mile away. I'm like, 2's on your left wing with the flash. So I start rocking my wings this way to show him my plan for him, and still nothing. So I move closer and closer in, and he's like, 2, still, I can't see you. Where are you? And I'm like, 2's on your left wing, 3,000 feet, flaring. I start dropping flares, and I start flashing my wing. And I'm like, dude, I see your helmet. I see you're looking at me. And the flight lead's like, 2, are you flying off one of the bad guys that we just killed out? And I was like, oh no. So I look down at my screen, and there's a screen that shows me where my flight lead is. And I'm like 20, 30 miles away from the guy. And I'm flying off one of the bad guys that we just killed out of this scenario. And the pilot's looking back up at me and just shaking his head. And I'm looking at him like, ah. So I plug it into 5 stages of afterburner again, go as fast as I possibly can, rejoin on my flight lead right as he's getting over the target. So now we're there. We got to be there for 20 more minutes. And because I ran there so quickly with 5 stages of AV, I'm out of gas. So I was bingo, and I had to RTD as a single ship and couldn't help any more of the fight. It was a complete disaster. But I got Cinco for 5 stages of AB for my my buffoonery and wasting all my fuel to get back in position when I screwed up in the first place when I was out of position. So that's my story of getting Cinco. All right, let's see if there's anything here. All right, are there any other questions? I'll let Ben see. I don't think my Twitter is where. If you guys are asking questions on Twitter, I am. Like I said, I downloaded the app like 2 hours ago. I can give it one more try. Let's see if this works. Yeah, I'm getting some weird things when I say Cinco. A lot of Spanish stuff coming up. So I don't know if that's working. All right. Well, that's my story. Hopefully it encouraged you. You can contact me through AIAA. You guys can drop me an email. Ben has it, the email. I'll just give you my email now. It's tuckerhamilton@hotmail.com. Just my name at hotmail.com is one way to reach me. Get out there. You guys want to do STEM outreach, you contact me. If you have questions about the military and flying and being a test pilot and applying aerospace engineering and the things you're working on to actually like seeing how they work on an airframe, and just ask me those questions. I'm happy to answer them all. I was happy to be here. Hopefully it was a successful event and we can do more of these webinars in the future. And I think that's about all for me. So take care, go serve your community, and God bless.